Welcome to episode 173 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Myers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourscreenplay.com. Today I'm interviewing Barbara Morgan, who is the co-founder of the Austin Film Festival. They're doing a new contest this year for fictionalized podcast scripts, which are basically like radio plays. I had not heard of this before talking with Barbara, so it was interesting to learn about this new medium. Barbara and the Austin Film Festival feel like this is a growing market for screenwriters, and we talk about some of the various challenges that writers in this medium face. So stay tuned for that. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread word about the podcast, so they're very much appreciated. Any websites or links that I mention in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcast, and then just look for episode number 173. If you want my free guide, How to Sell a Screenplay in 5 Weeks, you can pick that up by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. It's completely free. You just put in your email address and I'll send you a new lesson once per week for 5 weeks along with a bunch of bonus lessons. I teach the whole process of how to sell your screenplay in that guide. I'll teach you how to write a professional logline and query letter and how to find agents, managers, and production companies who are looking for material. Really is everything you need to know to sell your screenplay. Again, just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. So now let's get into the main segment. Today I'm interviewing Austin Film Festival co-founder Barbara Morgan. Here is the interview. Welcome, Barbara, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show and talking with me today.
Well, thanks for having me.
So to start out, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background. Where did you grow up and how did you get interested in the entertainment business?
Well, let's see. I grew up in Philadelphia for the most part, and then ended up coming to the University of Texas for college. And that, I think, is what all the creative drive spurred from. I really actually wasn't interested in entertainment, but this is a town that certainly has deep roots in that, in music and in film and in all kinds of other creative arts. So it's a pretty amazing pool of creativity here. So out of that, I started working with some people in music, and then it actually morphed into film. And the truth is, it was just I loved movies. I loved going to movies, and I was at a dinner party with the woman that Ann Richards had hired to run the Texas Film Commission. And I asked her why there wasn't a film festival in Austin, and she said, "Well, it's funny you asked that. We're trying to get one going here." And so I pitched her our idea, and they loved it. So that's kind of what happened. And the next thing you know, I'm now in film. So so it was really with complete ignorance. And also, it was complete ignorance that brought us to the screenwriter.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the truth is there were so many writers in Austin. I mean, Austin's really a writer's town, whether it's songwriters or film writers or novelists. And, we have this huge university here that keeps feeding it. And so I knew a couple of screenwriters already. The guys who did Apollo 13 were here. This was 1993. And they'd already entered into the film business, and there were guys like Bill Whitliff here. So we really kind of had a rich area to start something like this. And then when we started it, we really had no idea that screenwriters were really a group of people who didn't really get to hang out together very often. I didn't come from a movie business background, so I didn't know that those guys were never really invited to the party. And so we started inviting to the party, and they liked to party. So it turned out to be fortuitous for us. So that's how, the sort of long story about entering into that world.
So the initial intent, though, was not to make a film festival that was screenwriting centric. It was just to start a film festival in Austin and kind of just morphed into this.
Yeah, I mean, the original intent was we didn't have a film festival here, so that would just be cool in itself, just to have some great movies here that normally wouldn't come here. Mm-hmm. And it was not long before that turned into the screenwriter, because in the research process it was pretty clear that there wasn't anybody servicing the writer, and we had them in our backyard. Mm-hmm. So that was a lot of luck, and not knowing any better.
Yeah. So if someone is new to screenwriting and, they're just learning about the Austin Film Festival, what can you kind of pitch to them? What is the Austin Film Festival currently all about, and what are some good reasons for a screenwriter to want to come there next year, or I guess this year?
Well, as you know, we're each October, and the reason that we have a competition, and it's a great way for people who are trying to break in to get some recognition. But that's a lot of people anymore. It's pretty competitive, and the festival itself is a place where writers can meet like-minded people and really feel camaraderie, and also meet people who can help them further their career and not have those big doors shut on them like they do in LA. I mean, I think the biggest pitch for what the festival is really a place where people can get a foot in the door, whether it's meeting some people who are going to help you get to that next step, whether it's making your writing better, you're really honing your craft by getting advice from the best people who have done it, not people who write books about it, but people who've actually done it and gone through the process and know what it means to get notes and know what it means to be rejected and know what it means to actually have a great work end up on that screen. So it's people who really share, and they do share. That's the cool thing about writers, is that they share. Mm-hmm. And it's not this isn't something we need to hold close to our vest here. It's, hey, you could do this, but this is what it's going to take. And some of that advice is hard advice. Yeah. But then it's also just camaraderie in the sense that people really do, Have you been here?
I have never been to I keep meaning, it's on my to-do list, but I have not actually been there yet.
Well, I would say, many of the writers are fueled by alcohol, not all. We do have a lot of great alcohol sponsors, and writers seem to be people who love to drink. But they also are people that when they do get together, they're all pooled together here. There's no place for them to go. So all the panelists are hanging out with the registrants. Mm-hmm. And that's really what it is. It's not I'm here up here and you're down here. It's, hey, I was you once. Mm-hmm. And I get it. And here's what you have to do. And I'm here for the weekend and I have time to talk to you. I mean, it's pretty amazing. Yeah. So, and it's a really unique atmosphere, because writers, I'm biased here, but writers are amazing people. They're creative and smart and funny, and they give.
Yeah. And let's just talk for a minute about those interactions. What is appropriate and realistic for a new writer who goes to the Austin Film Festival to expect? I mean, when they're talking to some of these seasoned writers, is it appropriate to ask them to read your script? Maybe you can kind of just tell us sort of how you see those relationships going and developing, and what's appropriate and as I said, realistic for people to expect.
So there's a really well-known writer named Dan Petrie, writer-director, and he was president of the Writers Guild for a long time. And I've heard Dan tell a lot of newbies this at the festival, and I think it's the best advice, which is it's never really appropriate to just shove your script in somebody's hand. Mm-hmm. All movies are made out of relationships. It's a collaborative art form. And even though some people don't think they're in that, even though they are, but it is a collaborative art form. And the writers, you want to get like-minded. You want to be friendly with somebody. You want to have a connection before you ask them to read your material. And that's because, A, it's asking a lot of somebody, and B, you don't even know that person has a sensibility that you want them to be reading your script, Mm-hmm. I mean, it's all such a subjective. Reading a script is so subjective. And so the I think appropriate thing for for a new writer, and we do actually spend our first day with some panels for people who've never attended before, so to kind of walk them through the process. Greg Beal, who runs the Nickel, is great at doing this panel too, and it's basically telling people, here's what's appropriate. Like, just hang out with these people and talk to them and become friendly, and over time, that relationship, if you're a good, if it's a good relationship, they'll ask for your script, or the opportunity for you to tell them what it's about may come up. And in fact, Dan Petrie bought a script and produced the film called Dawn Control from one of our semifinalists in the bar at the Driscoll Hotel. And he's the guy that tells everybody, don't shove your script in their hand, but he may ask. And he, in fact, asked these two writers who were down there drinking with him, hey, I'd like to read your script, and then he made their movie. So that's, to me, that it's like dating. You're not going to, I won't go too far into this example, but you're not going to, on the first date, unless you're an idiot, ask somebody to go too far into the process. You want to get to know them a little better.
So let's dig into the fiction podcast script competition that you guys are running this year. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that. Exactly what is that?
Well, so we, you asked earlier, like, what we were about. And when we first started in '93, what we were about was opening the door for screenwriters. And then around '98, we could see the uptick in where television was going. And we opened it up to television. We started bringing in television writers, and then we started a television competition. And now we have a new pilot competition, as well as a writing competition for just existing pilots or existing TV shows. And last year we started delving into playwriting, because an awful lot of playwrights end up crossing over into the TV and film world these days. And we decided that the podcast world was kind of ripe for that. There's a number of really interesting new podcasts out there. Limetown's a really great one. These are all, it's like writing a show, a TV show, not exactly, but close. And if you're a writer, what you want is an outlet for your craft. You want to keep writing, you want to make a living out of it. And so podcasts, we really think are the new place to go here. It's an opportunity for people to write the way they've been writing in television and film, similarly, to actually get a foot in the door and, get some credits and work in a collaborative process, create something that's going to exist, maybe not visually, but in an auditory world, and be realized ultimately. I mean, it's realizing their words on a page. And so we feel it's the same world, and we feel there's potential for so much great crossover into that world, and podcasting is a really growing world, but that there's a potential for that crossover from people who are writing TV and film right now. And it's really, really hard to get people to pay attention to you as a TV and film writer. Maybe not as hard for them to pay attention to you as a podcast writer, So we're really, just continuing in this mission that we have of trying to open doors for writers in this medium.
So let's talk about the script and sort of what that would look like. What are the differences between a normal feature film script, which is intended to be filmed, versus a fictional podcast script?
Well, I'll tell you what, we're actually going to be doing a podcast on this. We have a TV, radio show archive, whatever, of the festival, literally from the very beginning, with all the people we've brought in, and it's called On Story. And we're on PBS stations around the U.S. and now on PRI. And we have a podcast with it. Obviously, it's the same content, and it's all the people that come into the festival talking about it. We've decided to do a podcast on this because, great question, in the searching for scripts that are just like you'd find a standard screenplay format, there isn't one that we can find in the podcast world. And it actually has, obviously, not visual cues, but audio cues. And so really right now, it's kind of in such an early stage, there's not really one out there. And we're going to be putting up some, like Limetown, a show I mentioned, they're sharing scripts with us that we can open the door, show people, and say, here's a script. Here's how it's written, and here's a podcast that's actually produced. So can use this as one of your formats. But there's not actually that we can find a generally accepted format. Some people write in England, they still do a lot of radio plays. It's still very common over there, even though it's sort of disappeared here. But it's now, in our world, becoming podcasts.
Yeah.
And there's a format for that, but it's a little different. So people could use that. You can find that online if you look up, British radio plays. Okay. But we're gonna start putting this up on our website so people can find an example like Limetown. We're gonna get that up pretty soon here, and we're gonna be interviewing a number of different narrative fiction podcast creators and do a podcast about it so people can talk about the process of actually doing it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pick this up because there's a motorcycle out here. Sorry.
Just
Can you hear me?
Yep, sure. In general, is there like a narrator that sort of gives the description and what's going on, and then the actors say their lines, or do the actors sort of give that exposition?
The actors, it seems like and I think there's a broad array of ways to do it. Some of the ones I've been listening to, it's a mix of both. So sometimes they're just, writing it right into the dialogue. And then some actually have that exposition in there. So,
okay,
it's sort of a brave new world, Ashley.
Yeah, no kidding. So, are there some producers out there that you've heard of that are looking for this type of material? And that sort of is the next question. Is I know screenwriters will be asking, well, okay, so once I've written one of these things, obviously they can enter your contest, and that could be great exposure. But where do they go to try and market these podcast scripts?
Well, and that's again, really like good direction in the course of this journey. We are ourselves trying to find out about, since it's so new. But we do know of some producers and agencies that are working with writers in this medium. It's not a lot, but there are some out there for sure. Finding them is also not the easiest thing in the world, but that's what we're trying to do. So we're trying to do for the podcast world exactly what we've done for the screenwriting world, which is be a conduit for that. We introduce them to those people. And our, the hope here is that we'll have a Cinderella story like we did with our screenwriting competition. I mean, in year one, we had this anonymous competition that got 1,300 scripts in back in 1994, and the winning script, which was a woman, which was all read anonymously by by producers that we targeted in Los Angeles. David Valdez, one of the producers that was reading, who at the time was producing for Clint Eastwood, found a script that was in the competition. He loved it and ended up winning. He sold it to Columbia Pictures and produced the movie. And that was year one. In fact, she won the nickel. The woman who wrote it won the nickel, and she couldn't collect her nickel because she was already a working writer. So I don't know that we'll have that Cinderella story, and I don't even want to pretend that stuff happens every day. But that is what we try to do here, is facilitate those connections. And so what we're going to be doing at the conference this year is having a track that's for podcasts specifically. And we're going to be bringing in all the people that we can find in that world who we can get to participate, who are picking up content, producing new content, creating it. There's a lot of people we've been talking to, and I don't want to throw names out there yet just because some of them we're still talking to about finalizing those relationships, but that's exactly what we're trying to do. We are just taking the model we did for screenplay and for television, and an awful lot of our people have been moved into the system in those categories, and we're trying to do it for podcasts. But it's out there, It's just not overt yet. I mean, I think we're in the early stages of the narrative podcast world. We're in the early stages of the fiction narrative podcast world. There's a lot of documentary content out there, but not really fiction, and that's what we're hoping that there's going to be a great crossover.
So in addition to Limetown, are there some other examples that people could listen to kind of get a feel for this?
Yeah, actually, let me if you give me a second here.
On your website, you mentioned Homecoming and Welcome to Night Val. I can definitely link to those. Yeah.
Those are some of the big ones, the ones that have a lot of audience so far. And it's interesting because a lot of them are in certain genre. Like you hear a lot of sci-fi and stuff like that. But the truth is there's more coming. There's one called The Message. There's another called Life After. There's another one called The Deep Vault. Alice Isn't Dead, Within the Wires.
Wow,
these are all ones that kind of have a fairly sizable following right now. And like I said, a lot of it, there's a lot in that world of science fiction. But there's not as much comedy. To me, that's a totally open realm for people. That to essentially, take what you might have written for a TV show as a comedy pilot, and move it to this genre.
Yeah.
So those are some of the big ones right now that I think that I can think of here off our list.
Perfect. And tell me a little bit about what the winners get specifically for this contest.
Well, I think it's a small cash prize, but then we bring them into the conference, and we'll be, introducing them to people and, highlighting them at our awards luncheon, and they'll be attending the festival and conference and, essentially be, brought out like a debutante. That's what we try to do,
Perfect. So I will link to the submission page. I think the deadline is May 10th. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll link to that page in the show notes. And what's the best way for people to kind of keep up with what you guys are doing? Twitter handle, Facebook page, website, anything you're comfortable sharing? Round that up.
Yeah, I mean, definitely if you, obviously first the website and austinfilmfestival.com, and then definitely on there you'll be able to hook up with our Twitter and Facebook and all that, and we'll be doing it through all of our social media. And then, just we believe in good old-fashioned mail, and we have all of our brochures and stuff we can send out to people, and they can contact us. You can actually sign up for that on our website. And the other place is keep up with OnStory. So OnStory is... OnStory.tv is our, if somebody loves writing and wants to be a writer, all of the, 24 years of festival advice is literally on OnStory.tv. We have our TV shows, our radio shows, our podcasts. They're all free up there, and they can get on there and listen to literally some of the greatest people talk about, some of the greatest writers out there, creators, talk about the process, literally not making it rocket science, but something that people who really love to write can actually apply to their craft. And on that, we will be doing some podcasts about podcasting. So, and the competition.
Perfect. Well, I will grab all that stuff and I will link to it in the show notes. Barbara, I really appreciate your coming on and talking with me today. This is fascinating, and it sounds like, as a podcaster and writer myself, it sounds like a great avenue for writers to start getting their stuff out there.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Barbara. We'll talk to you later. A quick plug for the SYS Screenwriting Analysis Service. It's a really economical way to get a high-quality professional evaluation on your screenplay. When you buy our 3-pack, you get evaluations at just $67 per script for feature films and just $55 for teleplays. All the readers have professional experience reading for studios, production companies, contests, and agencies. You can read a short bio on each reader on our website, and you can pick the one who you think is the best fit for your script. Turnaround time is usually just a few days, but rarely more than a week. The readers will evaluate your script on 6 key factors: concept, character, structure, marketability, tone, and overall craft, which includes formatting, spelling, and grammar. Every script will get a grade of pass, consider, or recommend, which should help you roughly understand where your script might rank if you were submitted to a production company or agency. We can provide an analysis on features or television scripts. We also do proofreading without any analysis. We will also look at a treatment or outline and give you the same analysis on it. So if you're looking to vet some of your project ideas, this is a great way to do it. We will also write your logline and synopsis for you. You can add this logline synopsis service to an analysis, or you can simply purchase this service as a standalone product. As a bonus, if your script gets a recommend From a reader, you get a free email and fax blast to my list of industry contacts. This is the exact same blast service I use myself to promote my own scripts, and it's the same service I sell on the website. It's a great way to get your scripts into the hands of producers who are looking for material. So if you want a professional evaluation of your screenplay at a very reasonable price, check out www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/consultants. In the next episode of the podcast, I'm going to be interviewing Australian filmmaker Matt Drummond, who recently wrote, directed, and produced a CGI-heavy film called My Pet Dinosaur. We talk about his career as a visual effects artist and how that led him to writing and producing his own films that use visual effects. So keep an eye out for that episode next week. To wrap things up, I just want to touch on a few things from today's interview with Barber. As mentioned, I'll link to all the fictional podcasts that we talked about in the show notes. I went and listened to a few episodes. They're all very well produced, very interesting. Limetown, I would say, was the most interesting one to me. It's pretty compelling stuff. It's basically in the style of something like the very popular Serial podcast, but obviously pure fiction. Basically, sort of the premise is there's an investigative journalist trying to solve a mystery, and that's kind of sets everything up and keeps the interest going throughout the episode. Check them all out if you have a moment. If you're thinking about writing something like this, there really is no better way to learn than to actually listen to a few of them. Once again, one of the things that really interests me about this medium is how quick and easy it would be for a writer, producer to get something out into the world and just start to build a following with their fictional stories. All you really need is a recording, some sort of recording device. You know, in this day and age, your computer will suffice. You need a few actors, but that's kind of the extent of it. Obviously, you need a good script as well, but that's kind of the extent of it. You don't need to spend a lot of time with production elements, cinematography, color correction, all of these things that you go through with a, you know, video production. You don't have to worry about with just the audio production. So again, it's a really interesting medium. I hope this contest is successful, and I'll definitely be keeping an eye on this medium as it grows. Again, if anybody's interested in listening to these, I will link to them in the show notes. And if anyone has a script for Limetown or Homecoming, please email it to me. I would like to take a look at it. I will post it in the SYS script library for everyone else to see. But I would say if there's any podcasts that have been fictionalized podcasts that have been produced and are up on iTunes, and you happen to have one of the scripts, just email it to me. I'd like to get a look at the format. I think that would be educational as well. And again, I'll put it in the SYS script library so everyone else can see it as well. Anyway, that's the show. Thank you for listening.